In this video, I'm going to show you a simple framework for what to do when safety and assent collide. These are some of the hardest moments in clinical work. A learner runs towards danger. A child refuses to wear a seatbelt. A student reaches for something that's unsafe. In those moments, it can feel like you have to choose between protecting safety and honoring assent. But you don't. I'll walk you through the sequence we use to handle those situations ethically. Safety and assent aren't competing priorities. They operate in a sequence. When a situation becomes dangerous, our job is to move through 3 steps: safety, regulation, reentry. I call this the SRR sequence. First, we make sure no one gets hurt. Then we help the learner return to a more regulated state. And then we re-enter the interaction in a way that restores autonomy and brings assent back into the process. This sequence matters because if we intervene for safety without a clear plan for what happens next, it becomes very easy for those moments to become coercive. And later in this video, I'm going to show you the planning tool I use to map this out ahead of time so you can build a clear SRR plan for each client and give staff something concrete to follow in these types of high-risk situations. So let's break down what the sequence actually is. Safety, regulation, reentry. The reason this framework matters is that it gives you a way to think clearly in moments that can feel very emotionally charged. Because when behavior becomes dangerous, people often either overreact and become controlling or underreact because they're afraid of overriding assent. The SRR sequence helps you avoid both of these extremes. The first step is safety. This means we respond to the immediate risk in front of us. If someone could get hurt, our job is to make the situation safe. That might mean blocking access to something dangerous or moving other children away from the escalated child, stopping the child from moving toward danger, moving dangerous items away from the child, or physically intervening in whatever way is necessary and ethically appropriate for that situation. I'm not going to talk about physical management in this video. In the past, I was trained in different physical management procedures, and I was a trainer for one for a while. But now I have changed the way that I practice, and I haven't needed them. If you're interested in how I made that transition and how I practice now, let me know in the comments, and I'll make a video about it. But this is the part that's important. The goal of the safety step is not to gain compliance. It is not to teach a lesson. It is not to make the learner follow directions. The goal is simply to prevent harm. Once safety is reestablished, the next step is regulation. And I think this is the step people often underestimate. Just because the immediate danger has stopped doesn't mean that the learner is ready to participate, ready to process language, or ready to make a meaningful choice. Regulation means that we shift from stopping danger to helping the nervous system come back down. And very often this involves co-regulation. Co-regulation simply means that the adult adjusts their behavior in ways that help the learner return to a calmer, more reorganized state. That might look like lowering your voice, reducing the amount of language you're using, slowing your movements, giving physical space, or sometimes simply sitting nearby without adding more demands. And at this point, some behavior analysts will have an objection. They'll say, but if we reduce demands or pause the interaction, aren't we reinforcing the behavior? And the honest answer is yes. In the short term, we might be. But when a learner is highly escalated, they're not available for learning anyway. Their nervous system is focused on protection. They're in fight or flight mode. They are not ready for skill acquisition. So this is not a teaching moment. The goal of the regulation step is not behavior change. The goal is restoring the conditions where the learning can happen later. If this raises questions for you about reinforcing refusal, I actually have another video that walks through the reasoning behind this in much more detail. It's about why reinforcing Refusal can sometimes be the most ethical and effective response. It's called What to Do When a Client Refuses Real Assent-Based Strategies for BCBAs. You can check that out next. But in moments where safety is involved, regulation comes before teaching. The purpose of this step is to create the conditions where meaningful participation can happen again. Once the learner is more regulated, we move to the third step in the sequence, which is reentry. This is where the interaction comes back into an assent-based process. Reentry means we intentionally create a path for the learner to come back into the interaction with some degree of autonomy, predictability, and choice. And this is where many interactions break down. Sometimes adults intervene for safety. The moment passes and then everyone just moves on like nothing happened. Other times, the adult immediately jumps back into the original demand. But if we skip the reentry step, the learner never actually gets a way to return to the interaction voluntarily. The moment becomes something that is done to them rather than something they were able to come back into. Reentry can look different depending on the situation, but it usually involves things like offering a clear choice, adjusting the demand, changing the activity in some way, or giving the learner a predictable way to participate again. The goal is not to force the learner back into compliance. The goal is to restore collaboration. So the sequence looks like this. First, we protect safety. Then we support regulation. Then we create a way for the learner to re-enter the interaction with assent. And this is exactly why it's so helpful to plan these situations ahead of time. Because when a dangerous situation happens in the moment, staff don't often have time to think about all three of these steps. So later in this video, I'm going to show you the SRR planning tool I use to map this out in advance so everyone on the team knows exactly what safety, regulation, and reentry should look like for that particular learner. But first, let's look at what this actually looks like in practice. I'm going to walk you through three common situations, one in a clinic, one in a home, and one at school, where safety and assent can collide. Let's start with an example that might happen in a clinic-based environment. Imagine a learner is outside on the playground. They climb up onto the platform on the play structure that's nearly 5 feet high, and they're standing right on the edge. Staff prompt them to sit down or move away from the edge. The wood chips in this particular section are due to be replaced, and it's hard-packed dirt under where the child is standing. A fall from this height could result in a broken bone. The learner looks at the staff, laughs, and moves like they're going to jump from the platform. At that point, this isn't just a teaching moment anymore. Someone could get hurt. So we move to the first step of the sequence, which is safety. Staff move closer to the learner and block access to the edge of the platform. If necessary, they guide the learner into a safer position. The goal here is not to gain compliance. The goal is to simply prevent a fall. When there's an immediate risk, protecting safety comes first. Once the learner is in a safer position, the next step is regulation. And this is where people sometimes escalate the situation by accident. A common reaction is to immediately start correcting the behavior. You need to sit, or that's not safe. You need to follow the rules. But if the learner is still excited or dysregulated or enjoying the reaction they're getting, adding more instructions usually increases the intensity of the interaction. Instead, staff pause the instruction. The interaction loses some of its steam. The learner has a chance to settle. Once the learner is calmer, we move to the final step, which is reentry. Staff create a way for the learner to come back into the interaction with some choice and predictability. That might sound like, do you want to go down the slide or try the swings? Now the learner is participating again, but in a way that's both safe and voluntary. What's important here is that the safety intervention didn't become the entire interaction. The learner had a way to come back into the activity with autonomy. Situations like this happen fairly often in clinic settings, but things can get more complicated at home, especially when safety issues show up during everyday routines. Imagine a parent is cooking at the stove. The burner is on, there's a hot pan, and the learner keeps coming close to the stove to get the parent's attention. The parent says, "Back up, that's hot." But the learner continues moving closer and reaching toward the stove. At that point, the situation requires a safety response. A burn could happen very quickly. So we start with the first step. That's safety. The parent or RBT blocks access to the stove and moves the learner back to a safe distance. The goal here isn't to win a power struggle or force compliance. The goal is simply to prevent the learner from getting hurt. But something important often happens at this moment. When access is blocked, the learner may escalate. They might cry, yell, try to push past the RBT to get to the parent. And that escalation doesn't mean that the safety step was wrong. It's a predictable response to suddenly losing access to something that they wanted. This is where the second step becomes critical, and that was regulation. Instead of responding to that escalation with more corrections or more demands, the adult shifts into co-regulation. The tone of voice softens. The amount of language decreases. The adult slows down and focuses on helping the learner settle rather than continuing the conflict. The parent might acknowledge the learner's goal. You want to be close to me. They might create some space from the stove or briefly pause cooking so that the interaction can calm down. Co-regulation means the adult is helping the learner's nervous system come back down after the frustration of being blocked. Once the learner begins to settle, we move to the third step, and that's reentry. Instead of simply pushing the learner away from the stove and continuing to cook, the parent creates a safe way for the learner to reconnect with the activity. That might sound like, "Do you want to help me stir this bowl?" Or, "Hey, can you bring me a spoon?" Now the learner has a way to participate safely. The safety step prevented an injury. Regulation helped them the escalation settle, and reentry created a path back into the interaction with autonomy. And this is often where the biggest shift happens because the learner isn't just being pushed away from something dangerous. They're being given a way to come back into the interaction in a safe and collaborative way. Now let's look at a situation that might happen at school. Imagine a student leaves the classroom and begins walking quickly down the hallway toward the building exit. Staff call their name and ask them to stop, but the student keeps moving toward the door. At that point, the situation requires an immediate safety response. If the student leaves the building unsupervised, they could run into traffic, become lost, or encounter other dangers. So again, we begin with the first step, safety. Staff move quickly to block the exit and prevent the student from leaving the building. If necessary, they guide the student away from the door and back toward a safer area in the hallway. Now, many schools have rules about how or even if this is allowed. Some schools only allowed staff to follow. So if you're working in a school, make sure you understand their expectations. For the purpose of this example, we are going to assume that you're allowed to protect the child's immediate safety. Just like in the home example, this moment often leads to escalation. When access to the exit is blocked, the student may try to push past the staff, yell, drop to the floor, or increase their efforts to leave. That reaction is very common. The student is trying to get away from something, and now the path has been blocked. This is where the second step becomes really important, regulation. Instead of immediately trying to force the student back to class or continuing to correct the behavior, staff shift their focus to helping the student regulate. The pace of the interaction slows down. Language becomes simpler and less directive. Staff give the student some space while remaining nearby to maintain safety. Often this also involves co-regulation. The adult's calm presence, tone of voice, and predictable behavior help the student's nervous system settle after the frustration of being blocked from leaving. Once the student begins the calm, we move to the third step, reentry. Instead of immediately returning to the original demand, staff create a path for the student to come back into the school environment in a way that feels manageable to them in that moment. That might sound like, do you want to walk back to class with me or take a short break in the hallway first? Or do you want to sit here for a minute or walk with me to the office? Now the student has a way to re-enter the situation voluntarily rather than being pushed straight back into it. Again, the sequence stays the same. Safety protects the moment, the regulation reduces the intensity in that moment, and re-entry restores autonomy. After seeing a few examples like this, you can probably start to see why it helps to think about these situations before they actually happen. Because in the moment, when a learner is escalating and safety is involved, staff are often trying to make decisions very quickly. And if there isn't a clear plan, people tend to improvise. One person blocks access one way, another person responds differently, and the interaction can become confusing or escalates further. That's why I like to map this out ahead of time using what I call an SRR planning tool. The idea is very simple. For each learner, you identify situations where safety could realistically become an issue, and you plan what each step of the sequence will look like for that learner and that environment. The tool walks through the same 3 steps we just talked about. First, safety. What specific behaviors are most likely to create immediate risk for this learner? And what safety actions are appropriate if those situations occur? Then regulation. What typically helps this learner return to baseline after escalation? What co-regulation strategies are effective for this learner? What should staff reduce or change in the environment to help the learner regulate? And then re-entry. Once the learner is calmer, how do we intentionally bring the interaction back into an assent-based process? What choices can we offer? What adjusted expectations or activities can help the learner re-enter safely? There's also space in the tool for debriefing after an incident, so the team can document what happened and refine the plan over time. When teams do this planning ahead of time, staff are no longer guessing in the moment. They have a shared understanding of what safety, regulation, and reentry look like for that learner. And that makes it much easier to respond quickly when safety and assent collide without losing sight of either one. Before we wrap up, let's bring this back to the original question. When safety and assent collide, it can feel like you're being forced to choose between 2 important values. Either you protect safety or you honor assent. But that's not actually the choice. The key is understanding the sequence: safety, regulation, reentry. When teams move through that sequence intentionally, safety interventions don't have to undermine assent-based practice. They become part of a process that protects both safety and autonomy. If you'd like help planning this out for your own clients, I've created the SRR planning tool that you can use, and it walks you through how to map that out. You can download that tool through the link in the description. And if the reinforcement question we talked about earlier is still on your mind, I also recommend watching my video, What to Do When a Client Refuses, Real Assent-Based Strategies for BCBAs, where I go into much more detail about the behavioral reasoning behind those decisions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.